Wild animals are being poached on a massive scale, with millions of individual animals of thousands of species worldwide killed or captured for their native habitats. Poaching poses a growing threat to elephants, rhinos, and other charismatic animals, as well as to smaller and more obscure creatures like certain lizards and monkeys. How does eating animal products contribute to the poaching of wild animals?
It's directly caused. We were just actually in Taiwan recently, and the farmers there in this beautiful area of Taiwan had put traps out into the forest to kill the monkeys and other animals that would come into the fields and take the crops from them. And so what the local Buddhist group actually didn't like seeing all these wild animals being killed by the farmers, because the farmers, all they care about is money. You know, they just want to, it's so hard to be a farmer. You've got to grow your crops, the weather's a problem, wild animals are a problem, so you just want to kill the animals if they're going to mess with your crops. But this local Buddhist group went in and taught the local farmers how to grow organically instead of using chemicals and pesticides to kill all these animals, and also taught them spiritually, taught them spiritual principles, taught the farmers that life is eternal. Think of it. Don't just think of your life as you're just born and you're just here for 60 years and then you die, a pointless life, just trying to make enough money to survive and buy some good things, and then you die, a meaningless life. Remember, what you are is infinite and eternal consciousness. What you are is a field of awareness that was never born and will never die. You're expressing through a physical body, but you are an expression of life. And other animals are also an expression of life. And this whole earth is an expression of beautiful, creative life. And they helped these farmers to see that. They gave classes on spiritual principles. So the farmers started to think, wow, all these monkeys, they're out there, and they started to feel for the monkeys, and they started to feel for the other animals. And so when we went to this village, which was just recently, all the dogs, they have these kind of like free-living dogs running around. All the dogs had only 3 legs, because they had gone out in the forest and they'd gotten their paw caught in one of the traps for the monkeys, and they'd lost their leg. And so the farmers decided to change things, and they took all the traps away, and they started growing organically, and they started working also in a cooperative way with the local wildlife, and say, all right, we'll take 90%, you can have 10%, 10% for the monkeys, and they let them have a little bit of it, and now the dogs don't have to worry about going into the forest anymore, and the younger dogs actually have 4 legs, and the people are so much happier. Before, they were alcoholic, they were unhappy, there was a lot of spousal abuse because they were violent towards the monkeys, they were violent towards everything, they couldn't make enough money. Now they have a foundation of spirituality, they feel that they're here to feed people, to be in harmony with nature, to make a living that is productive. And I think this is an important point. We have to realize that farming and growing food is a sacred activity in harmony with nature, and we need to teach that to the farmers also. We have to learn that as farmers, how we can live our life in harmony with nature, with all the insects and so forth, and not see our life as being at war with nature and at war with these other living beings, that we're part of a beautiful unfolding of life here on planet Earth.
In Chapter 5 of the World Peace Diet, what did you mean by the meat medical complex?
What I mean by the meat medical complex is the complex that feeds toxic foods essentially to the people, which then require the people to buy a lot of drugs and surgeries and other procedures. Because if I'm eating animal-based foods, and this is well understood, according to, for example, Michael Greger in his recent book, How Not to Die, if you look at the 16 leading causes of death in the United States, 15 out of the 16 leading causes of death are due to diets high in animal-based foods. The only one that's not is accidents. But the other 15, like heart disease and strokes and breast, prostate, and colon cancer and liver disease and kidney disease and other diabetes and so forth, all of these conditions are caused basically by animal agriculture. So eating animal foods is a huge driving force behind a bloated medical budget, which is actually robbing all of us. We have to pay higher prices for everything to cover the medical costs that the corporations have to pay for in their health insurance. So this whole thing is just sapping our economy. The most important thing we can do for a healthy economy is to create a healthy environment and to create a healthy physical bodies and people so that we have energy and we're not sick and we don't need a lot of drugs and procedures.
More than 90% of crop varieties have disappeared from farmers' fields. How does eating animal products contribute to this?
Basically, animal agriculture is based at its core on maximizing profit and dominating and exploiting other beings and seeing them as instruments. So we have a situation where now, after 10,000 years of animal agriculture, we have these massive corporations that, as I said earlier, are evading responsibility legally, and it's to their advantage to eliminate crop diversity and to take ownership, actually, of seeds and patent them, so that farmers need to buy the seeds from the corporations and to reduce the possibility of farmers having independent sources of seeds that can thrive without their chemicals, without their pesticides, without their herbicides and so forth. So the whole thrust has been to try to destroy and eliminate the diversity of life. That's really what animal agriculture does in practice. So again, it's always been, for the last 10,000 years, we've been doing animal agriculture from the very beginning. It's been a war against nature and a war against the diversity of life. We have just, basically a farmer wants only his cows out there. Any other type of animal, get rid of them. They might interfere with my profits. And as far as people growing crops, they don't want any other thing. They just want one thing. It's a monocrop mentality. So the whole idea is to question the narrative of animal agriculture, which is a supremacist, reductionist, materialistic perspective that reduces everything to marketable commodities, and realize that real strength and beauty is in diversity, in inclusiveness. What veganism is radical inclusion. It's including all beings within the sphere of kindness and concern, and including all varieties, that every variety is important. Every variety is an expression of life, and to honor and respect all varieties of plants and animals, and see that this is all wisdom. This is part of the genetic wisdom on our earth.
You just mentioned how farmers may actually have to buy seeds from the corporations. Seed diversity is disappearing, and 3 chemical companies own more than half right now. Our food security hinges on the struggle now underway over who controls the Earth's seeds. Can you expand a little bit more on that?
Yes, seed diversity is a huge issue, and these large corporations, Monsanto, Bayer, of course, is one of the major corporations that owns huge quantities of seeds. And basically, by having a monopoly on seeds, they can extract profits from farmers and keep farmers in a vulnerable position. And that's really been the case here. The basic idea, the lesson in all of this is really for us as human beings to learn that if we eat animal foods, we're putting the animals into a vulnerable position. We're making them dependent on us for everything, and we're stealing their sovereignty. Animal agriculture is stealing the sovereignty of other beings and imprisoning them. And so when we sow the seeds of stealing the sovereignty of other beings, we reap that ourselves. And so what we find now as human beings who are eating animal foods, if I'm eating animal foods, I'm being exploited. I'm exploiting others, but I'm going to be exploited. If I steal the sovereignty of others, I'm going to find my own sovereignty stolen. And so the seed companies are based on stealing the sovereignty of farmers. They can't make money on farmers that are sovereign, the farmers that can just save some of their crops for seed for the next year. They don't need the seed companies. They make their own, plants make their own seeds. That's a basic thing. You know, an apple has seeds, and you can plant the seeds and you have an apple tree, and you don't need the seed companies. So that is a threat, of course, if you want to dominate and exploit. So if we as citizens are dominating and exploiting animals, we shouldn't be surprised that we find ourselves being dominated and exploited by corporations, because we're sowing the seeds of that ourselves every time we eat animal food. So that's why it's so important for us, if we want to be free ourselves and create a system of justice and equality and freedom for us in our human world, we're called to stop dominating and exploiting animals, to stop stealing their sovereignty and stealing their purposes, because if we don't, we're going to lose our sovereignty and our purpose, and we're going to find ourselves being completely at the mercy of these massive governmental, corporate, financial systems that exploit us to the point where we really have no freedom left, and our health is taken away from us. And by stealing, by owning seeds, by making us dependent on drugs, on vaccines, and on other technological devices that they control, we lose our sovereignty. So what veganism is essentially, it's love and caring. It's caring about animals, caring about our own freedom, taking responsibility for our lives and about the impact we have on others, and doing the best we can to minimize the amount of harm and exploitation that we are causing ourselves. And it's only then, when we minimize how we're exploiting others, that we will be worthy not to be exploited. If we're going to be eating animal foods, then we deserve to be exploited because we're exploiting others. We have to understand that it's not our fault. We're born into a system where we're taught to exploit others, so we have to question it. And I think as each one of us questions that, then we begin to create a grassroots movement, and it's happening very quickly, of liberation of animals. The only way we're going to be free is if we liberate animals. As we liberate animals, we liberate ourselves. As we liberate ecosystems, we liberate ourselves, because we're all interconnected. All life is interconnected. That's the key point to understand. We can never escape that. We can't own and dominate and destroy seeds or insects or soil or aquifers or any of these things. Our idea, we have to understand that those ideas come from animal agriculture, which is demonic. Animal agriculture is based on the opposite of love and life. It's based on violence and destruction and exploitation in a way that's heartless and abusive. And if we're paying for those foods in any way, if we're eating and consuming those foods and feeding them to our children, then we're just propagating endless misery. And at the point now when we have so many people doing that, we don't have ecosystem. We can only do this for another few years, really, before it's going to be really a situation where we'll go extinct. And the irony is, if we do this, we go extinct ourselves, we won't even know why it happened. That's how clueless we are. So it's really about awakening out of the narrative of domination and exploitation that we see in the seed companies, that we see in the pharmaceutical industry, that we see in the weapons industry, all these industries that make money on people that are asleep and who don't understand what's happening.